So, Rukmini, it's great to have you. Pratham has been amazing at finding evidence, finding political opportunity, and having this big vision to scale since the beginning. I mean, scaling was reaching a level equal to the scale of the problem was the ambition from the beginning. So tell us about this dual strategy that you have where you're campaigning at the top with politicians and sort of opening the space, and at the same time you are getting evidence at the grassroots. Tell us about this.
So I would actually say that maybe, and looking back, I feel like we have more of a strategy than actually looking forward. But I think what we are doing is we have three different strands that we are kind of simultaneously doing. And we've done some versions of this always, but perhaps it's become more clear as three strands. So one is that you have to have a laboratory in which you're cooking your, potion, so to speak, and both from this whole problem identification to what is a solution and what will work and what is possible and how do you measure it and do you think it's success, that kind of thing, where you need to have kind of a live laboratory where you're doing this all the time, because I think that that's important for many reasons, and we can come back to that. Then you have anything that you feel on your definition of success that is working. You want to then see if other people can use it, or is it just your own recipe in your own home? And so therefore then there is a whole attempt to take the learnings from this and plant them into something bigger, and that something bigger could be just I think the important thing is it's not you, it's other people. So it could be a block, a city, a district, a state. At some level I think that that whether it is a district or 75 districts almost doesn't matter, because it's the logic of how you're going to...
So something scalable.
Yeah, so I think that how do you then hand it over to somebody else and work with them to plant it well is that next set of things. And then I think Madhav says it quite well, that you fight a war in many different ways. You fight it on the ground, but you also fight it in the air. You provide air cover for what is going on. And I would say that the Asar work is really the air cover. And it's really not connected to this in a direct way, because different teams do it, it's a different... I think about 10 years ago, there were people who were watching us carefully, and I would say in that context that land bridge had played a big role in saying that you need to institutionalize this part, because this part has a life of its own and a logic of its own. And tying this and that up, you don't mix up an army and an air force. You do have a commander-in-chief, but you may want to have two different ways in which you're doing this. And I think that has been a good way to move forward, because the Asar then can keep focusing on making sure that the problem is felt and the problem is understood. But I think as an organization, if we only were problem finding and not providing solutions, it would not match with our character. And so the fact that there is a solution cooking which is going on continuously has, I think, helped us have this kind of three-pronged approach.
Fantastic. I'm going to sit there. I think it's going to be better.
I'm very fascinated about the concept of scale. So Pratham's mission statement right from the beginning was every child in school and learning well. And I think the every child referred to some kind of unit. And I think that we've been agnostic about the unit. I mean, obviously more units are better than less if what you're doing makes sense. But I think it's the every that has been a very binding. So whatever you're doing, wherever you're doing it, can you reach everyone who needs it, not just a few in a location. And so really, if we were working originally in Bombay or Mumbai, then it was everybody every child in Mumbai. When you move to a state, and it's so the keeping your eye on that every, I think, has been important.
Is that the reason that evidence has been so important for you? Is because you have the eye on the every?
I think that is probably part of it, but I think evidence has been important for us because right from the early stages, when you had, you could feel, even though maybe we began with early childhood and you could see that were the needs that we were taking care of, but through the early childhood network, many demands from the community would come to us, and the tendency to want to help is quite high. But we were mindful of the fact that we had limited resources, limited time, which I think everybody thinks about. But I think maybe we went one step ahead and thought about our own limited capabilities. We are a certain kind of people and we can't solve every problem. Therefore, given who we are and given whatever resources we have and whatever time we have, what's the best thing to do was, I think, from early on a really important part of
our own question.
Yes, our own questions.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you're not wasting resources.
Yes.
You want to make sure that you are building on the capabilities that you have.
Yes.
It's almost like, I would say we should call it working at the right level.
Yes.
There is lots of things to be done.
Yes.
But we are quite good at this.
Yes.
So, for example, if I speak for myself, for 20 years I've been working with primary school kids. I have a really hard time when I walk into middle school because I really don't know what to do with the kids, because that's beyond my capability right now.
Yes.
If that is going to become a big mainstream thing, then we will all invest and make sure we have the capability to do that. But we are really not the constraint. We are a reflection of who people are.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think that making sure that what we can do, we do well, then we can then explain to other people how to do it well. But if they are fundamentally like us, meaning we don't have very high education, we are, much of Pratham is just a local person who's come from within that local context, you want to make sure that the key things you have to do are doable by many people.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, doing highly expert things may be possible by a few. But if you want to spread your idea, and really it's not so much replicating or scaling, but it's spreading your ideas, spreading your attitude, spreading your beliefs, spreading your faith, things can happen. Need to be kept at a level that spreadability is possible.
Yeah. And I think you're also using the evidence to pivot, no? To change.
Yes. To make hard decisions for yourself, to prove to yourself that you had a question, do you really have the right answer? To constantly ask, what is success? Is what I thought of as success last year the same as this year? Have we what's the threshold? How much room for growth? I think these are all measurement questions. But the measurement has to be done in a way in which everybody can participate, because that's what takes to the next level of learning and the next level of action.
Yeah. And so would you say that this evidence is in the DNA of Pratham?
I would say the questioning and the search for getting better is in the DNA, and evidence is part of that.
Okay.
Experimentation is part of that. Evidence of different types is part of that. We have, as you know, we do our own quite simple assessments as well as we participate in RCTs. So we believe that there could be many methods for helping you figure out, are you doing the best you can? And the DNA part, I think, is the quest for doing whatever it is that you've decided to do better.
Do you have stories that you spend too much time looking for evidence and then, too much money, and then eventually that didn't lead you anywhere?
So I think that, we've had cycles of, we've had, if you think about the last 10, 15 years, we've had periods of when we have done more of the direct work, which is what you're doing in your live laboratories, and there's a Pratham person doing it, and how much time you're spending with others doing it. And there have been two types of others. One is large-scale volunteers is others. Large-scale government is others. Because we believe that if you want to spread things, you can spread it through people and you can spread it through government. Like spreading through government is a little bit easier because there's an existing architecture and an infrastructure and a hierarchy through which things can go. Spreading it in the community is like you have to mobilize the community. It's harder. On the other hand, once people begin to own the problem and the responsibility for the solution, it's likely to be more durable, perhaps. So I think we've gone through phases of, what are we doing well enough? We had a phase in which we were looking at, also, when you're even in your direct work, how much responsibility can one Pratham person have and still make an impact? So there is, even in that thing, how much scale, how much cost, how much impact is a calculation you have to make all the time. And I think that there, every now and then we measure too much, and then we realize that measurement is not leading us, not giving us enough direction, or is too disconnected from the work we are doing. For example, in math, you're maybe measuring only some simple capability to do operations. That doesn't mean you don't value problem-solving skills, but the assessment of the problem-solving skills, and the collection of that data, and the analysis of it, and the feedback of it might clog up my system. So what is a way in which I can measure some things, measure maybe a tip of the iceberg or something, but keep the water flowing. I think we keep doing too much and then less and then some again. I think it's again you can't have a measurement that's frozen, because you're evolving, and therefore the challenges that you're chasing are evolving also. And so you don't want to change it too often, but you can't. I almost feel like you have a 3-year cycle for. The first year you're getting used to it, second year you're kind of doing it really well, by third year you're thinking of the next challenge. And I mean, I'm not saying this is a hard and fast rule, but in the last 25 years I've seen kind of 3-year. We're also I'm not young, and several others are not young, but largely we are a young organization. People get impatient. So even we have to switch people between the direct work and the spread work, because there are different skills that are required.
Yeah.
We find when you work with the government to develop a lot of skills really quickly, because you have to convince people, you have to negotiate, you have to scramble, whereas when so those are very good for all kinds of external facing skills. When you do the teaching yourself, you're really honing your teaching learning skills, your skills with the children, and both of these kinds of skills are important in our kind of work. So you have to switch teams between this and that, and if you have some simple metrics about success or progress here and there, then you know at least that each subsequent team is doing reasonably well, or you're setting standards for what you have to.
What are the most powerful simple metrics that you have that have over time have proven to be?
So I think that this looking at children's ability to read is a really powerful one, because at one level you're measuring ability to read. On the other hand, you're really experiencing a big change in that child's self-worth, and that's very exciting. Yes, this is the reading tool. And what you're doing is starting from wherever the child is, and you measure periodically how far they can go. And by the time the child gets here, if you say it starts, she or he starts somewhere here, then moves and comes here, you're measuring reading. But what you're really experiencing, and maybe you can experience that in the video more than in data, is the fact that first they were mumbling, they were shuffling, they were sniffing, they were sometimes trying to run away, and then slowly as they progress, the backbone becomes straighter, the voice becomes louder, the eyes begin to shine, they look in your eyes. They have their own opinion, and the simple act of measuring reading, I think, captures a lot of this. And to me, it is the person who's participating in helping a child go this way feels like they're part of some incredible transformation. It's like that butterfly, the butterfly coming out of it. And isn't education fact? Yeah. The education is a fact that, you have done something and you can continue to learn and you are worth it and all of this.
Yeah.
So I would say that that's a very important one.
So while you have the evidence of a child reading through this, you also have the feeling that you are seeing this personal transformation, but that part you're not measuring.
I'm not measuring exactly, but I think everybody who's involved in it can experience that. Yeah. And you see the change in how people talk about it. So, among Pratham people who are young and energetic, perhaps, they're not so surprised because they are at an age where they want the world to change and, the world is changing. But we see this very distinctly in the government. When we work, before working with teachers, we always say there has to be a team that's above the teacher level, but not too far up. These are the people who are going to actually support the teachers to bring about this change. And often such people are, middle-aged and jaded, and they've been stuck in a system that's not been moving. And it's very important. We describe this as, think of the current situation in our education system as, say, teachers are trying hard, but they feel whatever they are doing is not working for most children, maybe for a few. And so they become kind of a little bit discouraged. And they focus then on the possible success, because everybody wants success, right? And you ignore those who are kind of getting in the way. Then you look at kids who are kind of getting increasingly disengaged and disinterested because whatever is going on in the classroom doesn't seem to be for them. which seems to be for somebody else. So after lunch, you may as well go off and play cricket, where your participation is valued, even if you're just fielding. And then there are parents who have not maybe been to much school themselves, but have very high aspirations for education. They're getting disappointed because they don't see the change that they thought would happen when their kids went to school. And so to change this, you need some quick gains. Because I think the whole game is about people feeling, wow, we can change this. And it's not like somebody will come from somewhere to change it. We can change it. So when we work with the government, people at that level, middle-aged, kind of really a little bit, disheartened kind of people, it's important for them when they start working with kids to feel personally this change. And there I notice initially what happens, and the measurement really helps. Because when you start, firstly the measurement when you start shows that what I had assumed is actually wrong. That in 5th grade I thought almost all children could perhaps do it, but I find that a huge amount really can't. So that's a realization that there is a problem. And then there is a progress which seems to be quite quick. So, when we know from the Pratham work and from the measurement we do, that every 10 days you can see a 1 level jump.
Wow.
On average. You can move from here. Yeah. And we've done this a lot in our active laboratories because that's the message you want to have. And we want to say to the government, try 20 days. Why 20 days? Because I know you can do 2 levels of jump. And that 2 levels, moving from here to here is a huge jump because they're actually reading something. And you want people to taste success because I think we've been too long in a system that's been
broken.
Yeah, and where there's a lot of negativity, right? Mm-hmm. And so to get out of that, there's nothing like, I'm very lucky that we work with children because children can give you, everybody responds like quickly when they see this is for you. Mm-hmm. So when you group children by their level and you give them activities to do, already that feeling of disengagement stops. First thing you see is attendance in the class goes up. Children stop leaving the school after lunch. So you begin to feel all these positive things.
After 20 days?
Within, I think, a few days, you see the teacher sitting on the floor with me. So you're measuring reading, but you're measuring actually a whole change in what is happening around you, and you feel a change in yourself, like, I am doing this. If I can do it, then I'll tell everybody how to do it.
Fantastic. So when you started with the village education councils, thinking that would add social pressure, and then you moved to volunteers, training teachers. Were you using evidence to do those shifts?
So I think what happened is that let's say we were doing, again, 3 things simultaneously. One is, there was this constant experimentation and iteration and changing of the model. Should this be outside the school? Should it be inside the school? Should it be volunteers? Should it be teachers? And, we, or even by 2000, had enough people in enough places that all these combinations could be tried. And we had some internal measurement of this type to see how far are we going, how long is it taking. Then at the same time, we had more rigorous measurement, but the rigorous measurement takes more time and it takes more
your time also.
Our time, it takes more resources. So all the RCTs that have happened to us have always brought in extra resources, both intellectual resources from the research partners and actual resources to actually conduct the research. So I think that we've been quite good at doing the iterations based on the experience that we were having from what we were seeing. And if a couple of 100 people are systematically observing and talking about what they do, that's to me a form of evidence as well. And then you have your simple measurements, which may be measuring only something, but it's giving you a sense that you're moving in the right direction. And then you have these periodic RCTs, which are reinforcing the key shifts that you are thinking about. And we've been lucky that we've had the research partners that we've had who have been equally curious about, will this work, will that work, without really imposing any, this has to be done. We never had any, if donors want evaluation, we actually welcome it because we would love to do it anyway. So it has not been a burden in that sense. And I think we've been lucky with our research partners that the process of doing this together, you learn so much. So even if an evaluation shows not much results, you've gained so much that, and it's a mistake. Therefore, I sometimes suggest this to other people, that if you're having an evaluation, just engage in it, because having a team of more heads thinking about the problem is just
In what way does an RCT help you if it didn't give you the results that said, yes, you're doing the right thing?
No, so it told you what you should not be doing as well, right?
Oh, it does.
So I think that the RCT, for example, that we did in Bihar, where we did, during the school year, we worked with the teachers and with the, we basically worked within the limitations of the existing curriculum in the school, and then the volunteers did the catch-up work outside, right? But they did it in conjunction with the school. That was what the school year plan was. But we saw an opportunity to do a summer camp where the teachers and volunteers participated, but they put the curriculum aside and worked only on the foundational skills. And what the evaluation showed was that the school year stuff did not produce much learning, except what the volunteer was doing. But the summer camps did, right? And this was very important because at one level you would think of this as negative result. What we took away from this was that teachers under different circumstances can produce results. So it's not that the teachers can't do it, it's the circumstances under which they are put. So during the school year they are trapped in the curriculum. In the summer vacation they were not. This was a big, this actually gave us the strength to say we are going to partner with governments big time. Not just because they are governments and you need to partner, but because it can be done. The second thing it did, this fact that in 2 years you didn't have enough learning gains, but in 1 month you did, gave us the fuel to say short-term intensive programs designed right can take us far. So I would say that was a very interesting evaluation in which there were lots of negative results, but which were very useful in saying that if you're going to work inside the school system, work with the teachers but put aside the curriculum. Okay.
I think you and Madhav and other people in Pratham are very clear, strong leadership. You're also open to learning and shifting. And do you think it's always the case that an RCT is a good thing for an organization? Not for Pratham, but what are the main conditions under which an RCT can be a good idea?
I think the question that you're chasing should be an important one, and that should be agreed upon by whoever are the decision makers. And the second is, I think, I think the conceptual idea of an RCT is a very important one, because what are you comparing? How are you looking at progress? And the thought that other things being equal is a big idea. How do you ensure that other things being equal? Then you do one thing, and therefore you can attribute the change to that, not just to overall growth, change in the landscape. So I think the philosophical idea behind the simple design, the RCT is actually a really simple design, but forcing you to think about what is the counterfactual. Because when you are doing something so wholeheartedly and passionately, you kind of don't want to think that you may fail. You don't kind of want to compare, yourself to something else. So forcing yourself to do that is, I think, it brings some honesty into, not honesty is maybe a bad word, it brings some discipline into really saying that I think I'm doing a good job, but let me put myself through a hard test. Sometimes I worry we put ourselves through too hard a test. For example, the RCT that we did in the mid, 2005-06, was I'm going to go into a village and I'm going to have volunteers. I'm going to do this whole village report card using things like this. We're going to discuss it in the village. We're going to generate volunteers, unpaid volunteers. They're going to be highly motivated, and they're going to, they're going to find all the children who couldn't read, and they're going to teach them. And that's putting a lot on yourself. On the other hand, I think that RCT also taught us that just information was not enough. You needed a live demonstration that things can happen. Those who participated a lot in the talk often were not part of the action. So there are actors and there are talkers in the village. And it also taught us that though there was quite phenomenal volunteer mobilization, we couldn't reach every child. Because it depended on where the volunteer lived in the village and who he or she was going to get. And therefore, if you really wanted to get to the lower end of the distribution, you need to be inside the school. So again, I would say some negative results pointed us in the right direction.
And now you're moving into the rest of the world.
Well,
are you using evidence to go there?
So I would say that this is the moving, trying to do some of this in Africa. has been a combination of things. One is that JPAL, who has evaluated us for so many evaluations, feels that there is enough of an evidence base of a model that has been evaluated under many different conditions, different delivery models, with the government, without the government, out of school. There's enough body of evidence, not just one RCD, but a body of evidence that they feel more comfortable in saying that this has a chance of working. I don't think they're saying this is going to work in Africa, but this has a better chance of working than something else which has not been evaluated. So that's from the JPAL side. From our side, I think we feel that if there is demand from somewhere, to the extent possible, we should help.
Mm-hmm.
And we have also seen, for example, when Asar went to other countries, and we learned a lot from other people who were asking. It's like a mirror to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that stepping out of your comfort zone is a big learning for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, let me be very clear. I think we are doing this not just because it may be potentially helpful to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are going to gain.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to learn. We are going to learn what happens when you work in classrooms which have, like in Nigeria, we are working in 10 schools and it has 10,000 children.
Wow.
That's teaching us, something.
Yes.
So I think the stepping out is, a combination of all of this. And the fact that, we will not take resources away from India to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So if there are additional support available,
Mm-hmm.
then we will do what we can. Because our growth in India happened the same way. Somebody wanted you to come and do it somewhere.
Yes.
So whether it is Bihar or it is Nigeria, it's really somebody, you were not there before, and then people, wanted to do something better. So if you can help them, then you will.
Yeah. Will you get involved also in the ASER in the other countries, or it's not? That's not.
No, again, ASER has gone where people wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And teaching at the right level is also going where somebody else wants it to go. And in some cases, the countries are the same.
Yeah.
But in some cases, they're not. Again, this is a demand-driven thing.
Yeah.
If people see this full strategy, it may make sense in India, it may not make sense.
And you think
US.
ASER should be part of the strategy in Africa?
So I think that it depends. I think the basic assessment is part of the action. So you begin the teaching at the right level by doing the simple assessment. The tool is the same. But I think that the landscape within which an ASER-like citizen-led assessment rolls out, I think has a lot to do with the citizens of that country and the context within which.
Yes.
So I think Kenya, for example, is quite more like India. Uganda is not.
Mm-hmm.
And so the difficulties that different countries have had, give you some sense of where does a citizen. So one is the method of assessment, I think needs to be popularized everywhere, which is that you need to do one-on-one assessment of basic foundational skills, whether inside the school or outside the schools, how to explain it to parents. But whether you need a nationwide, citizen-led, household survey-based assessment, I think has to be looked at in terms of what that country
Specific
context and who wants to do it.
Yeah.
And what's the purpose for which they want to do it.
Are there things that you think that are not measurable, that will never be measured, but yet are absolutely core to the work that you do?
And I feel like, say, if I look at our own teams, and I've been looking at them, interacting with them for so long, I'm just really impressed by the energy of the young people and where they get it from. Mm-hmm. We train people on how to teach, how to assess. We don't train them on how to have this strong passion. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember I was in UP, and by the time I went to where the team was staying in that particular district, it was already dark and there was no electricity. So we were basically talking to a room of people where I couldn't see anybody. And I said, we've been here for a year and a half, and we've done really good work, and kids have really benefited. UP is very big. We need to move to another district. And in the dark, I could feel a real resistance. It's not like anybody was saying anything, but you could suddenly feel that this is not going down well. And then I saw there was a voice from the back of the room who said, no, we can't do that. And I said, why? And this girl said, because there are still children who need us, and if we go, there'll be nobody for them. So my work is not done here. I need a little more time. When the light came on, she was like 18 years old. And she had the guts to get up and say, I disagree with you. And this whole thing that I am the person who will, take care of the most disadvantaged. Where does that come from? it comes from the nature of the work, but it is such a strong DNA, and it comes from working in this. I mean, I don't know how to measure it, and how is it? Somebody says to me, "How do you create this?"
How do you get it?
And I was like, I really don't know. It seems to be infectious or something.
Yeah.
And how do you spread this
To other countries?
So this, I mean, we've been, when you write a proposal, how can you say this?
Yeah.
And, there's a little video from Botswana, which I think it'll be interesting to see, because the crew who visited Botswana feel like it has gone there. But how did it go? I really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are seeds of this change of heart or whatever, which underlies a lot of this. And, I don't know if it can be deliberately, I don't think you can put a training manual to say, now feel passionate,
Of course not.
Make friends,
Yeah. And does it go to the government too?
It goes, the key people in the government, those who really internalize it, I think it goes. Mm-hmm. And I think it is something to do with a very basic human value that everybody needs a chance. Mm-hmm. And if those haven't got a chance earlier, we can just give it to them. Mm-hmm. Because the easy thing is to just help those, who are easy to help. Mm-hmm. But I think you get a lot more satisfaction from, those, nobody forgets the kid that you helped to go from here to here, because it's such a big transformation. And we haven't done many things, but one of the things that I really wish people would do is go back to the kids, because the kids remember you. Wow. We actually went back and tracked one girl, and I'll send you the video. I've seen it 100 times. You can't help tearing up. How much that child remembers her transformation, and how much she loved her instructor. And she said, maybe he won't remember me because he had many kids. And I think that's the change.
And I guess the love of learning, no?
Yeah, and the fact that you can learn at any stage, I can learn. For example, whether it's Asar or Pratham, when you say to certain kind of Pratham people, let's go, for example, Nigeria. Lots of people from India want to go to Nigeria. And they're like, the girl who's leading the effort there, she hasn't told her parents where she goes. She said, I'm going to Nigeria. And luckily, most parents don't know where the hell this Nigeria is. It's like, they say, go carefully, eat well, and stuff like that. She's not saying she's going into the heart of Boko Haram. So I asked her, do your parents know? She said, something really bad happens, they'll find out. But why unnecessarily scare them right now? And you see this in, so many young people have a spirit of adventure. They want to do that really hard thing. They're kind of really nervous, but they want to prove themselves. We don't give our young people enough leeway and the responsibility. It's not just go have an adventure. It's like go change the world and come back.
Yeah.
And I think that if you as young people have that opportunity, and why young people? We are working in UP with this lot of people who are 50 plus, who feel like before I retire, I want to really make a big difference because I've wasted 30, 40 years and I haven't been able to do it, and now here's an opportunity. I'm not saying everybody's like that, but there are substantial people, and if you find them and nurture them. So in Africa as well, I feel like while a lot of people say, are you going to do systems change? I feel what we should say is we'll create 1,000 people like this, and then let them do what they feel is right.
Yeah.